All right, I'm going to get started. Morning, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Polk County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. Commissioner Gordon is excused. We do have a quorum. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up on my agenda is comments for items not on this agenda. This is the public comment portion of our meeting. Any takers? Okay. Next up is the approval of the agenda.
Also move.
And I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye passes. Approve of minutes of August 12th.
Also move.
And I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes. Here we are, SEDCOR update. Gentlemen, please step forward. Identify yourselves for the record.
Want to start?
Good morning, Eric Anderson with SEDCOR.
And I'm Alex Padesquivas, also with SEDCOR.
Floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
We always enjoy this discussion, and it's always good to provide an update on what's going on, sort of high level. So I'm going to since Eric's, here, I'm going to let him talk a little bit.
Yeah, we just put together an agenda to go through. It's kind of based on our work plan that we have. You got a clicker? Oh, yeah. We'll just start with kind of what we're doing around business retention, expansion, recruitment. We had a housing summit back in April that wanted to kind of fill you in on where we've gone from there with that, because there's some activity here in Polk County. The innovation and entrepreneurism work that we've been working on, some upcoming events. And I think you folks always like to talk about trends that are happening and, provide us some input and feedback. So I think that gives us an opportunity at the end to just talk about some of those things that we see. Yeah, so one of the ones I just like to lead with, because it's kind of a great regional story. I think you've all heard that we've been able to help broker an agreement between Yamasa and actually now 3 different farmers, I believe, in the region to grow a specific kind of wheat for them. But the reason I put that picture up this past spring is the 100th anniversary of the Oregon Wheat League. And Representative Scharf had contacted us and said, she wanted to be sure that her colleagues understood that there was wheat grown on this side of the mountains and it wasn't only used just for bread, that it was meant for other things. So we made the connection with Yamasa and they provided the little tabletop soy sauces for them. And she was able to we gave her a little bit of background on the company. They're 35 years in the area. And she was able to present on the floor a little bit about Yamasa, what they're doing for the region, and kind of celebrate them. And every legislator got a bottle of soy sauce, so it's a nice image for us to be showing. I put Frere's engineered wood on there because I know we've talked about the opportunities around in the wood industry in the past. One of the more interesting discussions we had this year or this last quarter was conversation with Frere's about what other types of buildings, that they could be looking at. And they were kind of following up on some of the discussions we were having about data centers and interest in the region. And so I went up and toured their new warehouse facility. It's a gorgeous, I don't say that very much about warehouses, but it's a beautiful, wood warehouse up in near their plants. And as a result of that conversation, we introduced them to the folks at Pack Trust that are developing, warehouse space and other types of industrial space around the region. So we're hoping that we start to see more of that kind of development happening here, not just kind of urban, kind of modern projects in urban areas, but actually looking at structural projects that show off the technology we have in the region. I think that's even come up with a couple of the City of Dallas projects that they're looking at some of the downtown areas and trying to hope for that kind of construction, or at least giving some bonus credits for that kind of construction. Really an opportunity to develop that supply chain in the area. It feels like it's wood that's coming from, rural areas of the state, but seems like, between PDX and all the architects and designers, it seems like Portland's getting all the attention. So we're hoping that we can continue to engage in the talk around mass timber and identify ways that we can, try to attract some of the supply chain in that as well. I mean, we've got a good start here with Xena, and I think there's other opportunities in the region. I mentioned data centers. We actually had our first kind of pre-app meeting in Salem with a pretty decent sized project. Ever since Portland General Electric announced its intentions to bring some Central Oregon renewable energy, working with the Warm Springs tribes to the west side of the state here outside of Salem. I mean, we had 5 or 6 different data center projects or developers contacting us pretty regularly, asking for information because they're trying to find 2 things: land and power. So we've had some initial conversations just to scope out, with Pacific Power Territory as well, where there might be power in the future, where there's capacity. Also talking to our municipals and co-ops, just so they're aware of this. But, some of these folks are looking at upwards of 300, 400 acres for campus type developments. And a lot of this is being driven by artificial intelligence needs and the data requirements for that. You want to talk about Crystal Creek?
Yeah, sure. Don't usually love to name companies on the record, but also this is a great project. We've worked with Crystal Creek for a long time. You might also know them as Dreamy's Creamery. And so they're bought a building in Independence. They're, vertically integrated sheep's milk creamery, and been helping them along as they've done their expansion. And it's been real fun. We gave them an Entrepreneur of the Year award a couple years ago, but it's been real fun to watch them sort of, go from food cart to brick and mortar. And they just opened their second brick and mortar in downtown Salem, in the Forge, the old Liberty Plaza building right downtown. So it's been very fun to watch them and scale up their manufacturing to meet demand. And it's definitely a bright spot, I would say, for, our day to day. So I'll also just point out, just to go back for 2 seconds, the Oregon wheat piece of this, Yamasa's paying above commodity pricing for this kind of stuff. And I think it's one of the more interesting, we've done for the last couple of years this event where we try to connect food processors with growers and try to broker. There's not that many processors left in the valley, right? And so they're known quantities, especially if you're a 1,000-acre farmer or whatnot. And so they're a really great company to, they have a premium product, but they're actually passing that sort of up, up to their suppliers. And it's like the model that I think that I wish every company would, subscribe to. So,
But they have specs. Or deliver.
Absolutely.
Deliver product that's much more stringent.
Absolutely. Yeah, they have a protein, like a higher protein content that's required. I mean, it's not without.
You fail to meet their need, you can still go to the.
But I would say if you can hit the spec, it's worth it.
Yes.
But it's just, I wish that model was more prevalent.
Keep it local.
Yeah, well, that's the nice thing too. So it's nice that they are expanding to other farms. It's not just the one that they started with, 5 or 6 years ago. So. But yeah, worth talking about. I mean, I know we've talked about it quite a bit, but it still continues to be one of my favorite kind of things that we've worked on the last few years.
When it keeps paying back too, which is good. And we use as an example, when we're talking to food processors about are there opportunities to look for localization of your supply chain.
Yeah, and I think it is important to continue to talk about it. I mean, it's like with what Ferris is using and anybody else that's in the engineered wood products, if they're bringing lumber and material from Canada, that's a problem for all of us.
Exactly.
It does happen. Yeah. So not that that's happening to Ferris, but again, before Yamasa started doing that business locally, where was their raw material coming from?
Yeah, Montana and Canada.
Yeah.
So it's a good point.
One of the areas that we've been working on as a result of our business retention expansion has been workforce housing. You talked a little bit about this in the past, but we've had a couple of companies, 2 or 3 years ago started with, we are having trouble finding workers because there's no place for them to live. And we're having trouble keeping workers because there's no place for them to live. So we started this process in Newburgh, which we've talked about before with the Newburgh Workforce Housing Consortium. This year we broadened it and working with the Council of Governments, actually hosted a summit here in Polk County over at the OLA campus of Chemeketa. And we brought in the Missing Middle Housing Fund. I think you were at the board meeting, maybe where Nate came and spoke. But he allows us to kind of introduce other developers, innovative developers, other people in the mix that we may not necessarily at Sedcor come in contact with. So we try to deliver the locals and the businesses. We held several roundtables, including one in Dallas. We did one in Independence as well. Yeah. With employers to try to, get information from them, build, provide feedback and input to the for the discussion that we had in April at the Build Mid-Valley. But we had over 100 people. It came to that. There are 3 task forces continuing to do work, looking at things like systems development charges, zoning. What's the other one that's, trying to remember the third. Regulatory, finance, that's a big one is finance. To try to figure out how we can help developers provide, resource or provide housing that actually fits the needs of the workforce instead of, by the time you add up a lot of these different factors, cost of financing, cost of systems development charges, they're unable to meet the needs, the market needs of the employees in your community. One of the things that came out of this was work with a company called Urban Form. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So Urban Form is they do zoning code, so development code, digitization. And so Yamhill County, actually all the communities now in Yamhill County have gone to this digital zoning, digital code. So it's sort of just really user friendly to be able to go see what all the overlays are and whatnot. We actually helped with the Missing Middle Housing Fund, applied for some state money to bring that program to Polk County. And so Independence, Monmouth, and Falls City are working right now on code digitization for their communities. So people love to have it everywhere, Polk County, but it's a good start. And that's I cannot remember the URL for the website, but for Yamhill, for Yamhill County zoning, it actually works pretty good to just go through and, click around. It's just like everybody's map and just like the maps that exist already, but they're a little bit easier to access. And for the cities, especially that most don't have those kind of resources, it's a nice piece. So it's kind of just a simplification, a streamlining of all that. I don't know if there's anything else.
Well, I guess the other thing, we didn't write it down here, but the other thing that we were talking about this last few years, but I think it's continuing to hit home is industrial lands. And I think we're going to continue to probably not just talk about it, but maybe higher priority on it. Because what we're seeing right now is a couple of different things. One, in actively here, we've got 2 existing manufacturing facilities in the county, the Marquis Spa and the Forest River facilities that, we need to have new employers come into. And the types of leads that we're getting from Business Oregon, they're looking for 100 acres, 50 acres, they're not looking for those types of facilities. So we've been promoting some of our needs and what the resources are here, what the assets are in the region to, the Business Oregon recruitment team, really trying to identify what other resources Sedcor can lean on to reach the types of businesses that would like those kinds of, companies. I know with one of them, at least one of those buildings, the Forest River buildings got, I think, 2 offers in on it, which is a good sign. One of them is a client that we're aware of that we've worked with in the past. So, but the Marquis Spas one is still, that's a significant number of jobs in the region that we need to try to, replicate somehow in the future. We spent a lot of time in the last few years talking about the Mill Creek sites over in Salem. That data center project I mentioned earlier, that took pretty much our last available site. So, for these larger new projects that, the state brings around to us, or a consultant comes and asks us, where do you have a 50-acre site? We're pretty limited. So, the work that we're doing here in Dallas with the, former Weyerhaeuser site, that's becoming kind of more and more of a unique site for us on this side of the region, as being kind of really the only industrial site that we've got. So if we can get somewhere, we're talking about the rail issues there and trying to figure out what we really want to see in that site. But I think that's going to be I know that's going to be a priority for us moving into the next year.
Can I interrupt you?
Of course.
So it makes me wonder, again, we have a 65-acre site here in Dallas as well, with alleged rail access.
Well, it's
And I say that tongue in cheek, of course. And, you know, I've been involved in all of these issues over the years. And, you know, of course, it's very troubling to see a property like this one in Dallas that's sat here this long and is beyond stale. I mean, it's like on death's bed, in my view. And of course, then you have temptations by governments, local governments, to want to convert it to something else that might be more attractive for development, i.e. housing. But it concerns me, of course, that Marquis and Forest River now are, I mean, they just sit there looking like they're just deteriorating the properties. Can you give us any sense that there are people seriously looking at these properties? No, you can't name names, but I mean, it would be nice to hear some glimmer of hope.
Oh, yeah.
That there's some potential life coming back.
Well, there are 2 offers in on the Forest River site. So that's a good sign. And one, like I said, one is a project that business, an existing business that we're aware of, that we've worked with in the past on their expansion. So, so there is a glimmer of hope that one in particular. Marquis, I'm not sure, seems to be a lot quieter. And it's, frankly, it's kind of a tough building. You really need to find the right sort of business. And, you know, in the long term, the more we talk about onshoring back our supply chain and opportunities there, I mean, that's good news for those kinds of facilities, because we do have some industrial facilities that could take that on. It's just that those kinds of businesses don't happen overnight. It's not a quick turnaround.
And the leads from Business Oregon tend to be, like he was saying, you know, 100 acres or 150 acres greenfield, or, you know, the complicated existing sites are not don't match what Business Oregon's looking for. We've had the recruitment team down here multiple times in the last year. Took them in Polk County tour, Marion County tours, and showed them the sites, but the leads do not sort of match what the properties we have and what existing properties.
I don't know how proactive Oregon is as a state to get its name out there, which is, you know, when we depend on the sort of trickle down nature of that. And, you know, a few years ago, you know, we would see the types of industry shows they would do, and we would see, you know, results from that. And we actually could participate as a partner. They've done a little bit of that around the semiconductor industry, but that's kind of where they've put most of the eggs at this point. And they have done, we hosted a roundtable with the U of O group that's doing a kind of a ground truthing of the department's targeted industries. And I think that was a good conversation to have, because it, you know, basically when you had people from around our 3 counties come, you know, there's a little bit of talk about supply chain around, you know, the semiconductor industry, but most of the conversation was getting back to where the opportunities are around, you know, value-added ag, food products, machinery and equipment, advanced manufacturing. I mean, we've got some real strong clusters of industries around, you know, like when you look at GK Machine and DK Fab and you know, kind of higher tech machine shops, even as an Ascentech. We do have an opportunity there as well, but it's just trying to find out where you get more of those to come from is the trick.
Thank you.
So the McGilchrist project, while we're just talking about industrial land, I know that's not gonna open anything that big, but will it gain us anything?
Which project?
McGilchrist Road, where they're rebuilding it, Texas, all that industrial land down by the airport
Oh, yeah.
in Salem.
I know there are a couple sites, I think there are air dependent sites that are over in that section that are going to be opened up for that. So, but they're not very big. I mean, that's the challenge.
That's- yeah,
is,
3 to 5 acres, what I was told.
yeah. I do think there's more opportunity at the Salem airport for airport related businesses. I mean, we do a lot of work in Aurora. The Aurora airport has a very strong, you know, employer base up there, you know, and, you know, Life Flight and, you know, several aviation companies. And we see opportunity with Metal Innovations is one of the companies that moved from Aurora to Salem Airport. And, they've got some pretty good, some ambitious plans to continue their growth while they're, now that they're in Salem. So we're hoping that other businesses can tie into that. They're already, making connections around workforce with even working with the National Guard and Garmin, on various things. So, maybe we can kind of develop our own airport cluster around the Salem Airport like they have in Aurora. Oh, yeah. So with our innovation entrepreneurism, there's been quite a bit of activity in this. I put the Latino program up on top. That's a program that we've been working with Latino Business Alliance. The Council of Governments has worked on parts of this with respect to the loan fund that's connected to it. The Small Business Development Center, Chemeketa, is also a partner in this, and Marin Ariola of Advanced Management Services. And we had our first cohort in Polk County this last round, and that's the picture of the graduates. I think we had 31 people, complete the program. It's a 12-week program. And this year, for the first time, this is funded largely through Business Oregon funding. This last round was out of the Economic Equity Investment Program, EEIP. And we also had a little bit of grant money to be able to dole out to eligible businesses or entrepreneurs that completed the program. And I think we gave out $33,000 to 17 businesses as a result that had, something that they could do to implement at the end of this. So there was, get a little bit of equipment or get a head start on something, implementing the plan that they came up with during the course. We just got funding for the Regional Innovation Hub, which is that's state funding. That's also building on the work that we've done with the Economic Development Administration in the past. As we developed the Launch Mid-Valley, this funding allowed us to continue to work with Mike White, our venture catalyst, who goes out and helps entrepreneurs develop their pitches, identify opportunities to get in front of investors. We've hosted a couple different investor opportunities there for the Mid-Valley Angel Fund, as well as a bigger one. We did Pitch Willamette that drew about 100 people to hear pitches from, I think, 7 businesses. And so we're going to continue this kind of work. One of the things that we've done as a result of this funding and to try to spread the activity around the region are these coffee clubs for entrepreneurs. And we have 2 in Polk County. One is hosted at Indy Commons and the other one's hosted here at the WAFED. We see this to continue on. This is a priority of the state and Oregon Innovation Council to try to identify resources to help entrepreneurs, specifically what they call innovation businesses that we still have a little bit of debate on, because I think some of us feel that there's innovation in every industry. So we walk a fine line between wanting to be sure that they're traded sector innovation, as well as trying to be a resource for just entrepreneurs in the area and get them into the fold, whether it's coming into the SBDC's programs or the resources that are out there. But these coffee clubs are really a way, just a facilitated discussion to have them lean on each other. And that's really what we found. One of the best results of the Latino program has been the camaraderie and the networks that are built out of going through those classes together. And the same thing is true with the coffee clubs. We did hold as part of this work, the Oregon Startup Conference in Newburgh. Is that June? Mm-hmm. Beginning of June. And had 162 people show up for that. There was a pitch competition as part of that, but we had successful businesses come and kind of share some of the mistakes they've made in the past and where they found success and provide advice. We had resources there, resource fair. It's actually, I think we're going to try to do something again like that in this next year, but it was a good way to bring people together just to talk about small business and starting and growing small business and kind of capturing the energy and the passion that a lot of these entrepreneurs have. We're working with the Oregon Entrepreneurs Network again for a pop-up and pitch. This is the food marketplace for consumer packaged goods manufacturers that we've been holding it at the Ag Complex the last couple of years, which is a good location, but OEN had said they really wanted to get foot traffic up. So we're putting it right before Thanksgiving and right before the holiday season, and we're going to do it at the Grand Hotel lobby, downtown Salem. So we're going to be taking over the lobby there with, I think there's 25 booths, and we're actively trying to get local businesses that want to get on, that are already on store shelves, that want to get on more store shelves, or want to get into the sort of the food innovation or the food system that we've got around food entrepreneurs. But if there are folks interested, we're really trying to promote this as an opportunity. The company like, they haven't committed yet, but Salt Creek Cider, for example, they're already on the store shelves at New Seasons, and New Seasons is one of the companies that generally participates in these.
I was going to say OEN generally draws folks from New Seasons and Market of Choice, like Buyers, Burgerville, other places that, known names, that people kind of aspire to for their products. So it's a chance, what we're always looking for, of course, is scalable businesses, and we want manufacturers to expand and whatnot. And so, the market pull can help do that. And so this is that matchmaking kind of event that we always like to do. So, and we're grateful that Oregon Entrepreneurs Network continues to host this in the Valley. So
One of our little wins that we got all excited about was Alex mentioned Burgerville. They'd attended these in the past, and one of the companies that participated is Don Froylan Mexican, cheese
creamery.
And one of the things they asked us is like, we'd like to connect with, Burgerville. So with OEN's help, we were able to make that connection. And then for the grand opening in Salem, they actually developed the Don Burger, which had Don Froylan cheese and Don Pancho tortilla strips on it. So technically it was the Don's Burger. But that made some headlines. It got some good publicity. I think a couple of news outlets came down for that, and so
we did our part.
We did our part. Yeah. Oh yeah. We went out and got a bunch of
local economic development. Yeah.
But it's nice little things like that. That's a value add, and actually, it's a good way for when we talk about it. Said, of course, like we know a guy, or we know someone that can help. Be able to, with the help from OEN, to be able to facilitate those kind of connections, and hopefully they'll get, Don Froylan cheese on their burgers that they offer around their service area.
The last thing that I'd like to talk about, it's a multi-layered kind of piece, but you should be familiar. We've talked about it for a few years now, working with this organization, Ag Launch out of Tennessee, runs an ag tech accelerator. The idea is, of course, that putting farmers in the middle of the innovation stream, so having farmers help do product development. A lot of times, and you're probably aware, farmers buying something doesn't work the way it's supposed to, et cetera, et cetera. Putting them early on in the product development cycle before they get to scale, before a startup gets to scale, seems to make a lot of sense. However, a lot of times you're doing it for free as a farmer because you bought the thing and now it's actually costing you money. It's not even free. Costing you money. So Ag Launch has kind of flipped the script on that and puts farmers sort of in the middle. So their accelerator is a 2 or 3 year program rather than 6 or 12 week, which a lot of business accelerators tend to be. All that to say is farmers end up actually owning part of the startups that they're in or that they're hosting or choosing. So there are currently 70 farmers participating in sort of the Ag Launch Farmer Network across 16 states or 17 states right now. But we have 4 of those farmers here in Oregon, in the Willamette Valley. 2 and sort of a half are here in Polk County. It's a neat idea. Absolutely. But it's also working. So the first exit actually happened this year. So one of the startups from the portfolio, there are 42 startups, I think, right now in the portfolio. One of them exited and all the farmers got a check because they had equity. And it was a small check, don't spend it all in one place, but sort of better than not. And it sort of proves that the model works. So all that to say, because of the risk of, at the farm for trying new products and whatnot, certain states, Tennessee, and looking at sort of North Carolina, a few other places have developed a cost share program. So to help actually cover some of the hard costs for these trials to de-risk a farmer trying this stuff out. So they're not coming out of pocket for something they're going to probably break within the first couple months, especially if it's hardware. But we were fortunate to be invited to apply to the Ford Family Foundation for sort of a pilot project for covering cost share for the farmers so that we can actually help the farmers pay for these trials so that they're getting equity for sure, but they're actually just putting their time and effort and knowledge into these startups, working hand in hand with the founders. And then we're covering, we're using money to cover their fixed costs and their hard costs for these trials. In 3 years, it's a 3-year run. I'd love to go to Business Oregon or, not that the Department of Ag has a ton of extra money kicking around, but it's feasible, at least in my mind. My naive mind, that we develop some sort of cost share program at the state level for trying new stuff out, de-risking, whether it's new crop, new technology, new practices, et cetera, for these types of things. Because the market pull sometimes isn't quite there, but really grateful to the Ford Family Foundation for helping us for seeing the vision, or at least kind of playing along with my vision, and giving us a little bit of seed money to pay for this. So we've got 3 years to fund some field trials, and hopefully, what hopefully will happen next year, committing now, saying it out loud, but we'll host a field day to invite you all to see sort of what types of trials, what types of technologies, hopefully get, a founder up here. We've got one robotics trial in the Valley right now, which is really neat. It's broken right now, but that's the sort of the point in some ways, right? You got to figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work. But especially as labor continues to be oppressed, especially in Oregon and the West Coast broadly. I think the robotics, any of those types of any kind of help that we can give. I think we need to prove some of those things out, but agriculture is really expensive and takes a long time to develop good products. So it's been really, really fun to work with the farmers on, picking startups and getting them to think about what's going to scale, what works, but it also helps having a diversity of crops in the mix. So there's a lot of commodity folks from the Midwest, but also a lot of specialty crop folks obviously out here. So anyhow, more to come. Hopefully next year we'll invite you to a field day and
So let me inject something here.
Please.
Question and suggestion. So I met with the new NREC director, Steve Young, yesterday, and Lyle's met with him last week.
I have a meeting with him in 2 weeks. I met him a couple weeks ago.
That can't happen fast enough.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, as an advisory member, NREC, it can't happen fast enough. He never once dropped Zedcor's name, so he has no idea who you are. And I'm not sure that his predecessors really know who you are. So we had a great 1.5 hour long conversation, and I'm very hopeful of what he can do going forward. He's been given a lot of rope. No money, but a lot of rope. And so I'm all in with him and his vision. But we need Zedcor to be a partner with the center in a very proactive way. He talked about a local robotics company who he's courting to get them to be a partner at the center. I guess the bottom line for me is, we all have to realize this is an ag and forest county. And it's great that we dabble, in the industrial things that we have out there, and they're very important. But the bulk of our county covers ag and forest lands. That's where our money comes from. So though I appreciate the specialized things that you work on, in general, the big commodities are still on their own. But that said, looking at NREC and all of our investments from counties and private business and associations at research opportunities, we need to have stronger connections and partnerships with our research facility in Aurora. And I will tell you, I'm committed, have been committed for a long time. If I didn't have any kind of barrier to reach out to other counties that should be stronger partners, this county has been a very strong partner. And again, got a green light yesterday to go do that on the director's behalf. So we have a lot of challenges just at focusing on the things we currently have and helping reinforce them. And it's not just about money. It's about bringing the very advanced technological entrepreneurial community into that and helping them understand what opportunities we have. I know each of the associations has really strong, vibrant outreach. Hazelnuts, for example, I know they do everything that they can to reach out to other technologies, I guess. But again, I think there's more ways that we can make those connections. So I'm hopeful for that. I hear a lot about Ag Launch, and I appreciate all of your work
Oh, yeah.
in that area, but I think we should be having more conversations about what could we be doing here more locally with the network Sedcor brings, the network that we bring.
Yeah.
And, how can we focus more on helping so that we can get, I think, a better understanding from our state government that these things are critical to our survival.
Yeah.
As communities.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. As you know, I'm the chair right now for ECAN, for Extensions Advisory Network, for better for worse. It's something I had a call last week with them and said some similar things where the lens that I look through is sort of what's the future look like? How are we getting towards there? How can Extension help? How can we use the experiment stations and the research stations to actually advance that with a commercialized focus, thinking about commercializing technology, commercializing research. That's of course my big push for them. I'm also involved in PCAN and the taxing. I think I'm probably overcommitted in a lot of ways to Extension right now. But I met Steve in passing a couple weeks ago. I was there for a meeting. And so we followed up and I'm always optimistic about how it's going to go. But I heard a little snippet of vision from him that I was pretty excited about. And he and I think are speaking exactly the same language when it comes to being that, but it's about money in a lot of ways too. And so we'll see how it shakes and see what the priorities look like. But to me, that's absolutely what Extension should be doing.
I guess my point would be, and not to disparage Oregon State University, but the current model doesn't work. He knows it and agrees. I have known it for a long time. I think all of us here have known it. So the bottom line is we need to find another route to take that engages our business community in things that actually will matter to them.
Yeah.
Again, when I talk about a local robotics company that I don't think you're going to be able to hold on to personally, I think they're growing so fast that they're going to find another way to go, but another place to go to. But we need them in the field and as one company, for example.
Yeah.
Again, I say this from my 23 years of ag and mechanical engineering background and looking for solutions to labor constantly. So those are the kinds of things I think that we all can be leaning into more as we go forward and helping support policy and financial positions of the university.
Yeah. Well, maybe not captured in the presentation, but I think this is probably about 75% of what I think about and what I do and what the day-to-day looks like with sort of sitting in those types of meetings. I think there's a way with commodity commissions. And I think there's a way to think about this a little bit differently that hasn't been tapped yet, but it's also, there's a lot of inertia. But it's also now's the time. Necessity is going to be the mother of invention for a lot of this stuff. So I think the squeeze is getting tighter. So yeah, absolutely. But optimistic also that Steve I've never heard a vision like that necessarily articulated, particularly from NREC. And I've met lots of folks, dabble quite a bit. And so hopefully that he can execute.
Watching Extension move from farmer and ag oriented to youth programs. And the farmers are the backbone of our economy. And hearing him and his vision reminded me of Sedcor. Is how do you bring people from outside in to educate them? And how do we build those relationships? That's what he's really after. I was really impressed on him also.
Yeah. We've been working a lot with one of the researchers there for the last few years, written letters of support. I've sat on committees for her and whatnot. I try to do that for a couple different researchers at NREC, but I'm hoping that with his sort of vision and leadership that we get more of that and more, to your point, sort of Sedcor being top of mind or like a first phone call rather than, oh yeah, I ran into you at a thing and did a thing, and I would hope they wouldn't, I always hope to be remembered, but I guess not. So
How do we bring processors in to help fund his program that helps our growers? That's the biggest thing, is to make that connection.
Not to derail from this, but that's a big that's an Oregon concern that for sure we're having. I think we mentioned it last year, but with
Pacific Natural Foods.
Yeah, Pacific Natural Foods, is got bought by Campbell's and is leaving or closing up shop in Oregon. That's quite concerning. And there's not a lot of bench strength when it comes to that. And so to your point, we're, like I said earlier, like, we've lost a lot of processors, or they've consolidated, and that's fine, except for, then your crop mix gets very, very limited, because we can grow anything. Yeah. But if there's no processing and if there's no market, then we actually can't. And so I think that's kind of the rock in a hard place that the Willamette Valley is at right now. And I think you're seeing it, grass seed right now, not rosy. Hazelnuts do look better, pretty rosy, but that's very dependent, on Turkish weather. That's not Oregon hazelnut growers in control of their own destiny necessarily, which, common in ag for sure. But I think that's without options. And I think that's why we probably, beat the Yamasa and, drum a little bit hard, because that's an option that didn't exist. How do we get more of those? But it requires, new processor requires big whack of money to build something out of the ground. And so, yeah.
With the Oregon, Hazelnut Growers of Oregon's project that we got to, be involved in, that's allowed us entree into the world of Ferrero, the company that owns Nutella, and, one of the big buyers of, Oregon hazelnuts. It's a multi-billion-dollar company that, if you saw, that they're now looking to buy Kellogg's if they haven't already. So, from that perspective, us having, we've heard them come. They came and, people from, Italy and Luxembourg, their headquarters, along with their American headquarters in DC, came here, stressed their interest in working with the Willamette Valley, stressed how the quality of the product that's grown here. And they look at it obviously internationally. So, one of the to-dos from that is to continue that relationship. They're in our magazine this month. We reached out to them to be sure that there was an article, that kind of represents, where our products end up. And, that's become our other talking point is, when you see a Ferrero Rocher on a table someplace, as you're unwrapping it, tell everybody that that's an Oregon hazelnut in the middle of that. Every one of theirs, because of the quality and consistency of our products that we grow here.
Yeah.
But it is, that we mentioned Pacific Natural Foods, but, that's one that, the Oregon Business Council is doing this thing on, business climate and what are the targets. Business Oregon paid for a study that looked at, kind of joke about it, but, people found out that, other states are, recruiting Oregon businesses. I was like, well, theoretically, we do that as well, but other states are having some big wins recruiting Oregon businesses. And, we've got a couple here that we've been, are lucky that they have value. They see value in their employees. They see value in their heritage or their supply chain as such that they haven't bitten on some of those, worms that came by. But at the same time, we're constantly trying to figure out what do we do on kind of the bigger picture to retain these businesses. And we always bring up Pacific Natural Foods because, I read it in the paper and, there's these ongoing discussions about, retaining businesses. And I was like, did anybody call, Campbell's when that was announced? Is there any sort of to-dos that come out of that? That's 11, I think they had 11 buildings in Tualatin at their campus over time, billion-dollar company, grown here in Oregon. I mean, they sold to Campbell's, several years ago. But, we talk about Boeing leaving, Washington State and whatever, but these are superstars in that natural foods, world, internationally known. They export to a bunch of countries. And for us to just sort of say, oh yeah, Kellogg's decided to close them down and move them someplace else just doesn't feel right at all. And I just don't know. I still haven't had anybody say what were the retention efforts, were there, did the governor's office call these folks to say, yeah, I might know the answer to that. But it is frustrating.
You guys are on the front line. And with all of these taxes placed on businesses, how has that affected the traffic coming to you, looking to locate here in our region of Oregon? Have you seen a big diminish or people telling you we need to leave?
We haven't had the retention issues. I mean, we try to have those relationships so that we do get a call or know about something in advance. And there there's at least one where I'm thinking of, a food products business that's, I know they've had layoffs and, kind of the countdown is ticking. We just haven't been able to get in to them. They've changed all their management around but largely, from a recruitment standpoint, I don't know if it's just that there's new teams involved but we're not getting just 3 or 4 years ago, I was routinely getting warehouse and distribution leads and some food processing leads. We just aren't getting those. Someone looking for a 40,000 square foot building, or they're looking to enter into this, the Northwest market, and they're looking for a good location to be able to reach San Francisco and Seattle, region. So that's an issue for us, certainly, is trying to figure out how to prime that pump more, because it's, one of the things that's we've been trying to talk to the state and through the Oregon Business Council as well was the need for resources to help Oregon businesses to develop domestic markets. Because right now, most of those resources at the state level are funded by the federal government. So they don't really pay to develop, domestic, they pay to export. So if somebody wants to sell their hazelnuts to Sri Lanka, we can get you a grant potentially or get you some technical assistance. But if you're trying to sell your cheese in the Southeast, you're on your own. So, that's one of the things that, particularly in a state like Oregon, that grows and produces so much more than we consume.
Yeah, 80+% export.
We really need to do a better job of supporting the businesses that have an opportunity to develop, East Coast markets or domestic markets, because we just don't do it. We've had 2 now export tariff-related roundtables, the one the governor held in our building, but one that we were asked to put together for Senator Wyden and Congresswoman Salinas. And that was just last week. We had 10 local businesses, different industries kind of sitting around talking about how they're being impacted by tariffs. And, the obvious one is, supply chain issues and being able to, some of the lessons learned during COVID didn't stick. And there's still some challenges with trying to get some components for some, products that are made here. But even one of our fruit processors was talking about how, they tried to get domestic strawberries, Oregon and California strawberries for their products. They've had more trouble getting California strawberries. A lot of it's because of labor challenges down there. And so the costs have gone up with lower demand. So then they're like, well, we can't afford those now and keep our similar price points. So let's go to Mexico for, those. Now there's a tariff on top of that. So they're just getting kind of caught between the rock and a hard place on all of this. And I think there's only a matter of time where all these things aggregate. And it's worrying. I think that every time we say that, we always look for opportunities in those discussions as well. And are there opportunities to, connect our robotics firms with local businesses to help them with their supply chain, for example? I mean, we've had good luck with that. They've been actively wanting to identify, suppliers there because they don't want to be stuck in with a bunch of 95% finished inventory and waiting for a widget to come from, overseas. But in answer to your question, I think it does feel like it's quieted down, and I think it's a combination of a lot of things, including kind of the system that we're used to dealing with just doesn't seem to be as proactive in promoting Oregon.
And you also mentioned power coming over from Warm Springs. Have you been tracking the removal of the lower Snake River dams? And I haven't found anything lately, any updates. It's kind of been quiet. Don't know where it's at. I don't know if you.
Well, we brought in somebody to talk about the importance of the hydro system, and one of our board meetings was that earlier in the year. I think so. Probably should do a follow-up and see where they are with that. But between the Santiam Canyon and looking at there's not a lot of power there, but if they take power out of there as well, cost of power. They may not be still on the level of kind of national averages, but at the same time, that's been one of the things historically that's attracted people to this region. Has been it's countered a lot of the other costs that are more expensive here. So as those prices go up, That's a significant benefit of being in the Northwest that goes away.
That is the greenest power created, and yet Oregon's attacking it like crazy, and removing the power from our dams. Makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, in one of my previous jobs, I worked for a utility that was, I think, 90, almost all hydro. It was, between BPA and its own resources. And because of, this is another state, but because of their rules around how they defined renewable energy, all of our regulatory folks were like, well, you can't call this renewable because it doesn't count towards the renewable portfolio standard. I'm like,
It existed.
but the companies, that have green, goals, energy goals or sustainability goals, they didn't know that it was 95% hydro. That was what our mix was. And that was the easiest thing for me to go out there and be a good guy. It was just, telling these folks that, yeah, you're already at probably 94, and, as much as the system can be with, backup and other stuff. And it wasn't even something that we actively promoted before that. It was like, well, it's not considered renewable by the state. And it's like, well, people consider it renewable and market, customers consider it renewable.
It's crazy. Those dams are running about 30% capacity. When they do maintenance, they can shut one dam down. The other three make up the difference easily. So, and then to want to remove those. Now they don't want to remove them, they'll just drain them. So like free flow, but they'll keep them for flood
Flood
protection.
control, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Just wanted to highlight a couple of events that we've done. We did an industry tour, Mac Metals, here a couple months ago, and then of course our Ag Breakfast. We appreciate your support as always. And I thought that was very well attended there. So yeah, and I always enjoy those discussions, and it's a great. I just enjoy the room because those are my people. Upcoming events, just to flag for you, we've got a SEDCOR Happy Hour. This is the third of 3 this summer that we've done just in all 3 counties. So this one's at Salt Creek Cider this Friday. We're doing a fall industry tour for members actually next Tuesday afternoon at Durant Olive Mill, which I think,
Amazing.
yeah, I'm really excited for that. I've actually have not been there. So our annual awards and membership meeting is on the 12th. You'll hopefully be there. We'd love to have you, obviously. It's one of our great as cynical as we all are, it is a bright spot in our year, absolutely, to celebrate all the great businesses and entrepreneurs and people. And then we've got a fall industry tour at Garmin, and then of course the marketplace that we mentioned before. So you'll see all of that in Friday emails that we send out, as you know. So the trends piece, I think we've already touched on a lot of this stuff, but of course, and I don't want to take more of your time, but labor piece we've talked a lot about. We haven't talked about interest rates, but of course that's, I think, the looming piece for financing projects and what it costs. Industrial land inventory, of course, we have talked about, but I think the other piece is wetlands for sure. As we talk about that, and as the state thinks about how how this all is going to work. And I don't see I personally don't see necessarily a clear path, but I don't think there is one really. So, but Oregon continues to be complicated. And then of course, yeah, the markets piece, I think we've all touched on a lot. So we kind of covered all these things, but I wanted to at least flag them and see, yeah.
And for the industrial lands, I mean, we've been there before. It's just like everything else. 20+ years ago, this was an issue, and at that time, they pulled together the agencies and said, this is an issue. How do you work with communities? That's when the state developed its certified lands program. That's when, all of a sudden we had, a real system in place as far as, identifying and mitigating, coming up with a wetland mitigation plan so you could actually provide greater certainty to investors, and looking at land. I think over time, that's just all been chipped away again. And, we keep kind of saying you've got regional solutions, you've got, the agencies, theoretically together, give them something to do, and industrial land is a good one because I think there's a lot of people that think that because they had, a wetland plan approved at one time or mapped at one time, those things change. It doesn't take very long for those to be outdated. And we don't want to be in the position where somebody looks at an acreage and says, oh yeah, this is great. And then we find out, well, you have to wait till next April until we can determine what the wetlands are, because that's when the marsh checker mallows bloom. And, then all of a sudden you're 2 or 3 years away from being able to do something.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you, gentlemen.
thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Presentation.
Thanks for the good conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I always appreciate that.
Do we have any non-listed items? Okay, anything else before this board? They're adjourned.